Good evening, everybody, and good afternoon to Pina and others joining from the West. My name is Mrinalini, and I am the co-lead for the Banyan Academy Center for Social Action and Research and the Deputy Director Partnerships at the Banyan. I'm very, very excited to welcome you to the first public open dialogue webinar that we are having as part of the School for Open Dialogue in Chennai at the Sundram Fasteners School. We actually started working with Open Dialogue and Dr. Pina about 5 years ago, and these discussions have been ongoing. We felt that Open Dialogue works very, very well with our context, especially because there is a lot in open dialogue for in terms of tolerating uncertainties and also utilizing local support networks, because we are a collectivist culture after all. And working with open dialogue and accepting the fact that there are multiple decision makers, but keeping the user in the forefront. I think all this will be discussed, but it agreed very, very well with the work that we do at the Banyan and the ethics in mental health care that we're trying to inculcate through our policy and advocacy and education work as well. So in keeping with all this, we decided that we want to start a batch on open dialogue and see how the course goes, what we feel about it, what the feasibility, etc. in 2019 in January. And we finished, all of us, me, Dr. Vandana, all of us included, we took part. There were 10 participants, and we got our certificates in 2020. And it only reinforced the fact that we need a therapeutic system like this in India. So we decided we won't stop with just conducting classes, but we will also launch a full-fledged school in a couple of years for open dialogue, and to see how these practices can fit into our therapeutic networks. So the second batch is also over, and we are planning to launch a third batch. But before that, we thought that it would be a good idea to open this discussion out to the public, because it has not been discussed as much in India as it should be. So before we launch the third course for the public, we wanted to have a little conversation on what this method is all about, and how did it start, what is the potential that it has, and we want others to see what we see, and have this very, very important therapeutic method established across different contexts and different geographies in India. I'm not going to introduce the panelists, because they would like to introduce themselves, truly in the spirit of open dialogue. So I just want to welcome all of you to this very, very exciting session. And I'm looking forward to a very enriching learning experience and a great conversation from the participants. So I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Pina to take the lead on the rest of the conversation. Thank you.
Hello to everyone. My name is Pina. I am a psychiatrist, and I worked almost 40 years in the mental health department of Trieste in Italy, and are now 2 years that I retired. And some years ago, I graduated in the open dialogue training, becoming a trainer in Finland. And so now I'm teaching here and there. And I'm really happy to be here with all of you. Maybe it could be nice to introduce all the panelists by themselves. What do you think? Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. We should go ahead and everybody introduce themselves.
Who is going next?
A suggestion, Mrinalini, maybe you just mention names one after the other and we do the introductions.
Then why don't we start with you, Dr. Seshadri?
Okay, good evening. My name is Seshadri Harihar. Like Dr. Pina, I'm also a psychiatrist. And for those who might not know, because a lot of people don't know the difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist, we are medical doctors who specialize in the diagnosis and treatment of mental illness. I've been working in the private sector in Chennai in the Apollo Hospital for the last 30 years as a senior psychiatrist, and I've been associated with the Banyan now for the past 2 years, and I'm part of the Covalent unit of the Banyan. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Seshadri. Rita, would you like to go next? Rita, you need to unmute yourself.
Thanks. Sorry. I'm Rita Teittinen, a psychiatrist also, and a family therapist in Finland. And I'm very pleased to be here. About myself, I could tell that I have a practiced open dialogue approach in very many different settings. And I am also a trainer in open dialogue. And excited and pleased to be here with you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rita. Noble, would you like to go next?
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Nobu. Nobu is my English name, and my real name is Nobuhiko Asai. I'm from Japan. I'm a psychotherapist, family therapist, and trauma therapist as well. And I was a trainee of Open Dialogue in Finland with Pina and Rita. And we have a 2 years training course of Open Dialogue, and we have become Open Dialogue trainers. So I'm really glad to see you and join this conference, join this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're happy you're here. Kirtana, would you like to go next?
Yeah. So, hi, this is Kirtana. I'm a social worker and I lead the emergency care and recovery unit at the Banyan.
Thank you, Kirtana. And you're also an open dialogue practitioner.
Yeah.
That context. Okay. Varsha?
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm Varsha. I'm a clinical psychologist by profession, and I work at the Emergency Care Recovery Center at the Banyan. I've been here for the last 4.5 years. So we got a lovely opportunity to do this course. Dr. Pina was our trainer, and we completed our foundational course in the year 2019, towards the end of that year. So yeah, so we've been since putting these principles and approaches into practice, and we found it to be quite effective. So looking forward to sharing our experience with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Varsha. And finally, Dr. Lakshmi, who's the head of our Department of Psychology. Dr. Lakshmi.
Hi, everyone. Lakshmi here from Chennai, and I'm heading Applied Psychology. And I've completed the level 1 of Open Dialogue, a beautiful concept and very, very interesting, new with Pina and our trainers, Rita and Noble, who are right here. And I really look forward to listening to all the different voices, the polyphony in the webinar. Thank you.
Nice touch, Dr. Lakshmi. Thank you. So, Pina, would you like to take over the session, please?
Yes, thank you, Mirnami. Before to start giving some short information about what Open Dialogue is, I really would like to say that this meeting now is very meaningful for me because as Mirnali said, we started our journey all together by organizing the first Open Dialogue, Indian Open Dialogue Foundation course. And now we are organizing the third one. And it's really a pleasure for me and for all of us, I think, to see how the Open Dialogue network in India is growing. And this is really exciting for all of us. I want to really thank in a special way Vandana, the founder of the Banyan, for her enthusiasm and determination in supporting this Open Dialogue school. And so this is very, very relevant and important that the people running the organization and managing the organization are really interested in this approach and in this school. I want to thank, of course, Rita and Noble for their support in the courses. And just one thought about how the three realities that are somehow here represented from us. I mean, the Banyan from India, the Open Dialogue from Finland, and the Mental Health Department of Trieste in Italy. Are the three of them, all of them, included in the new guidance launched by the WHO last month. Is a guidance that includes a range of good practices in mental health that focus and implement the centered persons and the human rights approaches. So I feel to say that we have many things in common as good practices, and this is a very good opportunity, and the courses are a very good opportunity to share the many things that are in common in these good practices, and also is I think a very important opportunity to develop maybe a new point of view, new suggestions about how to apply Open Dialogue, especially with the most socially disadvantaged people that are the main clients of the Banyan. So thank you to all of you. And because we decided to start with some information about the origins of Open Dialogue, and Rita is from Finland. I would like if you, Rita, can share with us, I think, your precious experience, because you were there almost from the beginning of the experience. Please, Rita.
Again. Yeah, thank you, Pina. And I have 2 slides I've made, very concrete things. Maybe we can share those slides. Is it, how does it happen?
Please, if the Banyan can share the slides.
I will share.
Yes, please. Yes, and this is very practical things about the origins of Open Dialogue, and maybe familiar to many of you. And please take the other, just the first one. Yes, thanks. This approach was developed. Now I lost the last one. Yes, thanks. I will read this mainly. The development was started it was done in the psychiatric hospital of Keropudas in Western Lapland in Finland. And the initial situation in 1980s was such that incidence of schizophrenia in the region was high and recovering from psychosis was weak. And most of the patients with first episode of psychosis were not recovering very well. They became disabled, and many of them became chronically ill. And there was the need of developing the treatment of psychosis among the leading professionals and other staff. And this resulted in a change in the way of organizing the treatment and the way of encountering the clients. The aim of this new treatment was to avoid hospitalization and to avoid or minimize antipsychotic medication. And later, studying the treatment processes led to the identification of 7 principles that seemed to be linked to the good results. And at this point, I want to add that the team in Keropudas Hospital, first they started to implement an approach that was developed at University of Turku in Finland earlier during the 70s and 80s. And the aim of that approach was to integrate psychoanalytic and family therapeutic treatments in order to construct an optimal way of treating schizophrenia groups, psychosis. So in Keropudas Hospital, they further developed this approach to be more dialogic, flexible and open. Also the theoretical background ideas were changed towards a more constructivist approach. And this approach that was developed in Turku was called need-adapted approach. And the key person behind this in Turku was Professor Yrjö Alanen. We go to the next slide now. Please, can you put the next slide? Yeah.
Nalini, the next slide.
Yeah. Is it so that can we have the next slide if it's there? Thanks. But this was the first.
I'm sorry, I had a connectivity problem. Can you see my screen now? Or?
Yes. Can you get put the first? This is the third.
That's fine.
Okay, you want the second?
Yes, the second. Yes.
Yes, okay. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Thank you. That's good. So there was much education that was offered for the staff in the hospital, the outpatient clinics, and the social services, social service, resulting in a better cooperation between them. In the 90s, the whole or entire hospital district in Western Lapland was practicing open dialogue approach and cooperating over limits of organizations. And there was lots of research done also. One research that was published in 2006, 5 years follow-up research that showed that about 80% of the patients with first episode psychosis were back to the work or studying, and only about 30% of them had been using antipsychotics. This research was made by Aaltonen, Seikkula, Alakare, and others. And very recent research by Tom Bergström, 19 years follow-up research showed that the good results persisted. And to conclude, I want to name 2 key persons in this development in Keropudas, and they were Birgitta Alakare, leading psychiatrist, researcher and trainer, and Jaakko Seikkula, leading psychologist in Keropudas Hospital at the time, later professor of psychotherapy at Jyväskylä University and now emeritus, and actively training in several countries nowadays. This was what I had put to the slides. Should we go forward and to the 7 principles? Your turn.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Rita. It's my turn. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So from now, I'm introducing the 7 principles of open dialogue. As Rita mentioned about 7 principles, open dialogue is approach with 7 principles, like ambiguous, little bit ambiguous principle, but we don't have a concrete approach like a skill or technique. Only a reflective conversation is a kind of a skill of open dialogue, but it's not a main point of open dialogue. And what we have to do is just like continue a dialogue. So to continue dialogue, we need to make it important. And I introduce 7 points. The first one is immediate help. Literally, in 24 hours, the therapists and doctors and the medical workers are coming to the patient's house to have a dialogue when the emergency comes. Normally, clients and the patients want to have immediate help, but usually we, a psychologist or a psychiatrist, providing the therapeutic approach only once a week or twice a week or something like that. So only a few times in a week or in a month. And they have to wait for a long time. So it would be missed the important time. So we need to have a dialogue as soon as possible. And the second one is a social network perspective. Not only a social network perspective, we can get so many kind of perspective and so many kinds of helper perspective. About the client and the patient, they need so much of help, and so many helper, a supporter want to help the client and patient, but sometimes their intention is a struggle each other, and it would be difficult to make a good decision. So we need to make it important to have many perspectives, including the social network. Social network means a kind of a network of a client and a patient, like a social worker or psychiatrist or nurses and their family members or someone like that. The third one is a flexibility and mobility. When we're doing an open dialogue, we don't stick to only one or the particular way of doing. And we can have a flexibility and mobility, and it's connected to the need-adapted approach. So open dialogue is coming from a need-adapted approach in Finland. So that kind of essence remains in the open dialogue approach. And the fourth one is a responsibility. Each of us, like each of therapists, supporter, need to have a responsibility to have the case of the particular clients and patient. And normally we don't change so many times. So many times, and we decided supporter and helper listening to the client and patient for a long time. And continually, psychological continuity is a fifth one. The psychological continuity means like psychologically, we need to have a relationship with client and the patient family. If the therapist is frequently changed, we cannot keep our conversation and our relationship for a long time. So in order to make a safe relationship, we need to keep our relationship psychologically as well. And the sixth one is a tolerance of uncertainty. Normally, when we are coming to the psychiatry or psychotherapy, we easy to get the kind of a person want to have a concrete idea or concrete approach, and we are getting easy to be the person providing good advice. But it's very difficult to have a good advice, and we usually we cannot have a concrete the best advice. So in our relationship and in our disorders, there are so many kind of uncertainty. So we need to be tolerant against the uncertainty and just having a dialogue continually. And the seventh is a dialogue with polyphony. I mean, the purpose of open dialogue is not having a solution, but just like having a dialogue and continue dialogue. And to continue dialogue, we need polyphony. Polyphony means like multiple voices. Multiple voices, we can welcome that, and so many kind of idea would be welcoming, and we can have so many idea, and the client and the patient can decide if they like, and if they doesn't like, they doesn't need to decide the idea, and just kind of be tolerant of uncertainty, and just a continued dialogue. I mean, the essence of open dialogue is just like having a dialogue and continue that. So when we talk about the dialogue, we need to divide into listening and speaking. You can see that the bottom of the slide, divide into listening and no, this one, yeah. No, the bottom of the slide, divide into listening and speaking. So when the one is speaking something, for example, I am speaking this, and you are listening to me. So when the one speaking something, others just listening to that. And after finishing speech, the other can start speaking. So we need to listening and speaking when we have a dialogue. If we don't divide into two, listening and speaking, it wouldn't be a dialogue, and it may be becoming like a monologue, like just a speech, not an interaction. And the other things, on your right hand, at the bottom of this slide, awareness rather than aboutness. When we when we talk about something, we don't need to stick to something about. So rather than the contents, in a dialogue, we need to be with the client and the patient. That is the dialogue, and to have the time of dialogue, the important thing is just like being with the client and patient and the families. So not about the contents. So this is the 7 principles of open dialogue, and this is a kind of a simple explanation, and maybe you have some question on something like that, but later you can have a question later. So my presentation is finished right now. So thank you.
Thank you, Noble and Rita. And I'm, please, the next slide. I'm going forward in this short presentation of the main principles and main features of the open dialogue, talking a bit about the treatment meeting or the network meeting that is the main element in the open dialogue work. It means that all happen in this place that is the treatment meeting, when the family and the professionals and the network of the clients and the family, they meet all together to talk about what is more relevant for the family and the network. So it's a place where it's possible to talk, but it's also possible to organize and to make a plan for the clients, the main client, and for the network, for the family. It's quite important that this network meeting is done when the network, the family, asks for it. And the repetition of the meeting, the number of the meeting is really connected with the needs of the family and the network, but also with the desire of the family. So sometimes could happen, especially in crisis in the beginning, that this meeting happen every day for 1 week or 2 weeks. And then according with the desire and the needs of the family. The duration of this meeting is normally about 1.5 hours, so it's quite long, with the idea that if you put a lot of effort and attention in the beginning, for sure you can gain time in the future, avoiding some chronicity into the situation. The main goals, the main aims of these treatment meetings is, as Nobel said, to facilitate the dialogue between the people, between the members of the family and of the networks. So the role of the therapists, that we can call facilitators, is mainly to facilitate the dialogue. So it's not to give a solution, it's not to just say what the family of the people has to do, but to facilitate that the circulation of the dialogue in order to create a shared understanding and then joint story in between the member of the family and of the network. One of the main points for the facilitators is to create a safe space into the treatment meeting. The safety in this therapeutic place and system is something very, very important to allow to the family, to the people, to the persons to open up and maybe to express some words, some issue that never they probably were able to express, some trauma or some picture of the situation, trying to create a joint picture of the story. One of the main issues, I think, about clients, users, people using the mental health services, mostly of the time we can hear this, they don't feel properly listened. And this creates a very big frustration and a big lack of trust in the therapy and in the service. But when happened that the person feel really careful, attentive, listened, then something happened. And what happened is the possibility, the chance to create a therapeutic moment, something, some possibility for a real change. This idea of the safety is very important also for the therapists. Because the possibility for them to express their own feelings and emotions in a safe space for them also, is very, for them to give an emotional response to the word that they are listening, is very useful to create a therapeutic alliance. That is basic point for the therapeutic process. So this kind of psychotherapeutic approach, that is not only a psychotherapeutic approach, but is a psychotherapeutic approach, joins with a strong attention in change the structure for what the listening and the organization of the system can answer to the real needs of the family. So this kind of psychotherapeutic approach, I think, is quite very empowering the people. It's not a technique, as Nobel said already. It's something that's creating a safe space for properly listen, give a lot of power to the people. And I think this is the main point of open dialogue. Another very important goal is to discuss in this treatment meeting openly and to make decision making is done while everyone is present. So nothing happens out of this context of the treatment meeting. That is very much in accordance with the motto of the recovery, nothing about me without me. So this is another point that gives to the open dialogue a very strong input about the democraticity of the approach, because the difference in power between professionals and users, clients, tend to be quite reduced. Please, the next slides. So now to go a bit more, be a bit more clear about what we are going to do in this treatment meeting, I will use these 12 key elements of fidelity to dialogic practice in open dialogue by Olson, Sekula, and Zaidonis, that are very relevant, I think, for many things. First, to evaluate. As Nobel already said, sometimes it's very difficult to define what open dialogue is, when we are really dialogic and when we are doing a proper open dialogue treatment meeting. So this 12 key elements is a kind of guidance, a kind of guide to test ourselves and also to evaluate and give some good information about what to do to be really in a dialogical way, manner, and attitude. So I go through these 12 key elements very quick, but we can later deepen something if you like. So 2 or more therapists in the treatment meeting. It means that to have a treatment meeting need to be at least 2 therapists and need a family or a network. So what does it mean? That when we are just one therapist and one client is not a treatment meeting. This doesn't impede to have a dialogical attitude in a session where there is one therapist and one client, but we cannot define it as a therapeutic, a treatment open dialogue meeting properly. Then the third one is using open-ended questions. It's very important how you put questions, if you want to put questions, especially in how you start the meeting. And the suggestion is to start with a very open question, like, here we are, who is going to start, who would like to introduce the points, or who decided to come to this meeting. So something very, very open. So the family can feel free to introduce the main topic for themselves. It's not the professional saying what we are going to talk about, but it's the family, the clients, the users starting with this. So we need to be very open with starting from the first questions. Then responding to the client's utterance in a verbal and not verbal way, in a manner that make the clients feel welcomed and, as we said, in a safe space. And sometimes allow some silence, because the silence give the possibility to think and to open up something. Emphasizing the present moment means looking for the feelings and the emotions that are there into the session, and try to give space to this, not just go quick forward, not giving space to the people to express and underline some emotions and feelings that are expressed. Eliciting multiple viewpoints is about engage everyone in the meetings. So the facilitators have to be really very, very present there, talking not a lot, but creating the opportunity for all the people that are present to express their point of view, their opinion. Use of relational focus in the dialogue means to explore relationship in the family and to connect each other and their point of view. Responding to problem, discourse, or behavior in a matter-of-fact style, especially when in the treatment meeting happen to talk about symptoms and psychiatric problems, it's important to keep a natural response, try to normalize the talk, not just stay on the symptoms and using medical language, but just using natural language, keeping the mood of the conversation. Emphasizing the client's own words and story, not symptoms, mean even more to emphasize the words of the family members, of the clients, picking up some keywords and asking more for to give an input to the clients to deepen a bit what they are saying, and to give also the idea that they are really listening carefully. Conversation amongst professionals is the reflective meeting conversation. This is a really important point in the open dialogue approach and in the treatment meeting. This reflective conversation started in reality in the family therapy treatment, but was quite different, absolutely different, because that time was a mirror in between the therapists in the session and the therapists that were reflecting about. The innovation in the open dialogue is that this reflection, this exchange in between practitioners, their own reflection happen in the presence of the family. And this absolutely changed a lot the situation. So the family can listen. And if they want, after they can give some feedback, interact, and pick up what is really useful for them. But this give also to the professional and to the team the possibility to express openly their own doubts, for example, or some needs of help from the family or from the colleagues, and to express sometimes some fragility, because as we said, to express the emotional responses from the therapist allow to the therapeutic alliance to grow into the conversation. So this reflective conversation became sometimes a very central moment when, after the reflection, we can see, especially in difficult moments when the conversation is a bit stuck, and after the reflective conversation, it's possible to see how became more fluid. The conversation became more open and fluid. Being transparent is again connected with this idea of democraticity of this approach, means just to take time, to take a bit of time in terms of not push your own agenda as a therapist, but stay with the agenda of the family, of the clients, not adds new issue or new topics or new ideas, but just stay with the topics that the family is bringing there. The last one, tolerating uncertainty. Already Nogo said something about this. And this is a suggestion, especially to the therapist, in not taking the attitude to give a solution, to give soon an answer, but just take time, stay there with in the conversation, and support the clients and the family, the network, support them to accept that it takes some time before something can transform. And during this time, they will not be left alone, will be the team somehow present if they need for some time, even every day, to support this tolerance of uncertainty, sometimes also with drugs, not just answering at the first moment with the prescription of medicine, but waiting a bit to find out some other point, relevant point in the whole family and network. So I think we gave some ideas of the main point of open dialogue, and for sure we can deepen a bit more later in the question time. Thank you for your attention, and please, Mirnali, I give you back the floor to go forward in the webinar.
Thank you very much, Pina, and thank you, Rita. Thank you, Nogo. That was a very, very good foundation to, get the rest of the discussions going. So, I mean, as you can all see, and those of us who are watching on YouTube, that this is very, very pertinent and applicable to multiple contexts. And in the context of India, so I said this in the beginning, that, in the Indian context, where we are a group, we take decisions on behalf of each other sometimes, but what we are trying to do here is try to take decisions with each other. So, so we are not saying remove the other, we're just saying arrive at a different approach, through which the decision making can be more collaborative, it can be more dialogical, and what we say is not always what we mean, and that's what I really learned through open dialogue. So, just to sort of talk about our experience, in the session. So even when we introduced ourselves in the first class, Pina asked us, tell me your name and tell me about yourself. And we did, speak 4 or 5 sentences. And then Pina repeated the same sentences back to us and said, is this what you meant? And that was extremely helpful, because that's probably not what I meant. I was trying to say something else and then I said something else. But the idea is that there is somebody who is listening to what I have to say, and takes it, internalizes it, understands, and says it back to me. So, we are trying to figure things out together, and it's always two heads are always better than one in any decision making process. So right from the word get go, it made so much sense to all of us. So I'm going to call upon some of my colleagues, senior colleagues, who've been practicing open dialogue for the past 2 years since the first batch, to talk about their experiences. I will start with Varsha, because Varsha, you and I did the course together, as did Kirtana. So would you like to start with some of your experiences in the field?
Yeah, sure, Manali, thank you. I would like to share one of my first experience with a client whom I engaged in open dialogue approach, in addition to the ongoing pharmacological treatment. So this was right after completing the foundation course in open dialogue. So just to give you a brief understanding of what really went on, I may have to give some details about the client. Client was about 60 years old and has been chronically mentally ill for about 20 years. And there have been several instances of readmission due to poor commitment of treatment and lack of social support. And the main problem identified with this family of 2 daughters and 1 son was that every time they were in crisis or found it difficult to manage their mother, because the neighbors would complain about her, or they would feel that most of their time is spent on sorting their mother's issues. So somehow their mindset was such that the mother is the problem, so she needs to be fixed. The rest of it will, fall in its place. So this attitude somehow was a recurrent theme that came up in many of the sessions when we had right after their readmission into the hospital. So so the OD team decided to address this issue per se. So instead of focusing too much, like Pina and everybody else had mentioned, focus less on the client's diagnosis or symptoms, and how only that needs to be changed in order to bring a state of equilibrium at home. We shifted the focus and addressed the problems in the network of relationships surrounding the client, with respect to her son, with respect to her daughters, and how that was interplaying in the client's, how it was manifesting in as a problem. So yes, mom has an issue, but how are each one of us also responsible for it? How are we contributing to the situation, and how can we work together to figure things out? So first, as a therapist, I started seeing the client from a different lens. So when I started seeing them from a different perspective, as in I started seeing the entire family, to be responsible for whatever was going on. So when I started focusing on those aspects, the family members also started seeing her from the different perspective. So this came up in the reflective session, and how the onus of one's health lies on everybody in the family was eventually discovered. So the dialogue involved reflexive intervened process of listening and speaking. The best part was the client's voice was heard after many years, and she opened up during the session with her children. She spoke about how guilty she would feel every time she got better. She would feel guilty for having done something terrible and caused so much trouble and pain to the children. So it was very participatory in nature. I spoke less, and eventually the daughters were somehow tolerant to feedback given by the client, feedback given to each other as well. So this brought about a shift in the attitude of not only the caregivers, but also for me as a therapist towards understanding and on what exactly is required and what care and treatment is required. So so there was less focus on pathology and more on relationships, attitudes between people who cared, their background in the social context, how do we strengthen communication process. All that was paid attention during the open dialogue approach. So she was discharged in December 2019 and she continues to stay at home with her family. We've been following up with the family every month. There are ups and downs, but they've realized that admission into the hospital is not the only solution. And they've been trying to find small ways to deal with whatever concerns they're going through. And as a practitioner, for me, I had to make a lot of changes in my language of pathology and slowly try to unlearn some of the training that I had gone through. So that was the first step that I had taken into, as I started using this approach. So this was one experience that I wanted to share. The other one is based on a session I had with another client. Specifically, the reflective process with my co-therapist and observer played a key role, and therefore I would like to highlight that here. So somehow the first half of the session, which Pina also shared some time back, that is exactly what happened to me. So first half of the session somehow completely focused on what the client was feeling, what was their story, what was their narratives. And somehow it constantly revolved around a lot of pessimism. Like there were a lot of disheartening life experiences shared. And there were recurring statements by the client saying, I cannot imagine a future. It has been tough throughout. Every day seems to be this way. I feel so stuck. I think I'm a pushover. Even God has given up on me. So these were the constant themes that kept coming up. And somehow my interview also revolved around the same lines, and I felt stuck and pulled along with the client. So when I shared this during my reflective session with my co-therapist. And to my surprise, I felt slightly less vulnerable. I thought, okay, why am I putting myself in this position of feeling stuck? But somehow I felt less vulnerable because I was sharing it in a very authentic way. I mean, it was genuinely, that's what I was feeling there. So right after that, the co-therapist and the observer kind of reflected on some positive indicators which the client had shared during her narrative, and I was not able to pick that up. So I want to be loved, I need a companion. They were terminology saying sense of empowerment, and religious coping was a protective factor. So all this came up during the reflective session. And somehow this process changed the flow of conversation between me and the client after that. So the second half of the session was a lot more easier on me, and the client also was able to come up with certain things that are workable, that are tangible, that are realistic, and we were able to take it forward. So, and also it was interesting that the client liked listening to the reflective sessions with the co-therapist, with the observer. So it felt like she was listening to someone else's story, and therefore could see it in a more objective manner. So, and there were also reflections about the client's tone, about my tone as a therapist, my mood, client's mood. So all that acted as reminders for all the participants during the session. So these are some of my experiences. I would like to hear from Kirana how she felt when she started using this approach.
Thank you, Varsha, for sharing your experiences. Yeah, so I have been working with a client who has a very difficult childhood, who has faced multiple rejections and neglect that resulted in a strained relationship in the present. And as a result of that, there is a frequent loss of job and there is a lack of initiation to live. And initially, as Varsha also pointed out, that we're feeling stuck because whatever I did was not enough, or I was, as a therapist, I was feeling how more I can help this client, or what more can be done, or what is that needs to be changed, or how do I need to change my approach, or how do I need to proceed. So all these were, at some point of time, as Varsha rightly pointed out, was pulling me down, and uh, I was really helpless, actually, to put it in the right form. But after using this, learning about open dialogue, started applying it and see how it works. What one thing that really helped me, or the one thing that I felt really useful, is the support networks, because many a time this particular person has stated that I don't have a family, or I don't have anybody to come and listen to me, or I don't have anybody to share my concerns, and I don't know, like, what I have in my life, and there are nobody around me. So this was a constant issue the person was facing. But once we initiated open dialogue, there was a therapist, a co-therapist, an observer, and when during the first session, the person was introduced the concept of open dialogue, and when he saw like three people sitting together to discuss things with him, he was quite surprised. And I still remember at the end of the first session, he told me that I never knew that so many people will come there for me. So many people will be there for me. And, there are so many people to really listen and really understand what I'm going through. Because it's always like it's either you or some other person with me, but this is the first time I see like so many people coming, and they're not talking about my problem, but they're really listening to what I'm feeling and what I'm undergoing. So this really made brought in a lot of change. And yes, initially it was little difficult for us to bring in the family, but once the family also joined the session, that really changed the whole dynamics. Because for this particular person, he never expected that his family would be present there uh, uh, for the meeting, which was, again, a very big track for him. And this made a lot of sense, actually, because generally there is a lot that's happening because of you, our families like this, or because of you, my life is ruined, and there is a lot of blame game. But in open dialogue, the family members also felt very safe to share their concerns, because they know for sure that their voices are being heard. And when the client hears these stories, this reflective space, or this space, help them to understand, or think about the other person, or think about what the other person is going through. And the kind of strength they can draw from each other, uh, understanding each one's life scenario, and how everyone is trying their best to resolve the situation, or how everybody is trying their best to uh, solve an issue, really brought in a lot of change, which was in every sessions. Um, uh, Even the family members, after the session, they used to call me and say like, I never thought I would share all these things, because the first time I'm sharing all these things, because every time it is only about the problem, or it's only about the solution. But this is the first time I'm sharing all my concerns. It's the first time I'm really listening to, the client's problem or their voices, which is really very amazing. And one another important factor which I felt really very, very helpful as a therapist is the presence of another therapist. Because many a times in an individual therapy, it is, uh, uh, as I stated in the start of the session, am I doing justice, or is there something more to be done, or is it enough, or something needs to be done more? So all these kinds of questions keeps popping in, but in an open dialogue, when you have a co-therapist with you, and when you know that you're heard as a therapist, when you get a feeling that your voices as a therapist is also heard and supported by another co-therapist, that gives you a lot of strength, that gives you a lot of support. And personally, I felt I was able to extend the same support and strength to my client, because in an individual session I feel stuck, and individual sessions somewhere I felt, as Varsha rightly pointed out, vulnerable. But in this open dialogue, when I felt supported, when I felt I was heard, when I felt my voices are given a voice, and I could see a change in my body language that got reflected in my body language, and I become more open and inviting, that really helped the client in a way. Because in individual sessions, it was about the problem, it was about, why don't you try this, why don't you try that, why don't we do this. But in open dialogue, it's more about the feelings, it is more about the stories, how the therapist feels, or the thought process of the therapist, and how they relate to the client stories, and this all made a change. And all these things, was very interesting, and to a great extent, all these things really helped us, and we could factor in our sessions also. So yeah, with the like 4 or 5 sessions we had with this particular user, all these things were really helpful. So yeah, Dr. Lakshmi, like as an observer, how did you feel, or what was your experience?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I was very nervous because I was, interacting with 2 clients whom Kirana and Varsha have been working with. And we decided to do a few sessions with both of them. And I was grateful to be an observer, but it meant, listening and listening really well, and then, interacting in the whole process, which was very unique. What did I learn? Um, for me, I learned that there is a new family, and the family is maybe the open dialogue team, the Banyan, the place that the client was staying. I mean, this is something that I felt I would wanted to share, and I think Kirana and Varsha also, we discussed this. While there have been difficulties, and in the context of the Banyan, we felt that a lot of conversation was also about their current lives in the context of where they were living. So that was a very interesting family and social network that emerged in the dialogic process. Another thing that I felt was very interesting is equalizing. To resonate what Pina said, democracy. Very often, I don't think any of us were used to talking, to share, let our inner voices come out, and let the silences stay. That was very new. Paying attention to be bold to speak what's going on in my head was a very new experience for me. And I learned that I have to be careful, be aware, be sensitive, because, like I think Noble said, the sense of witness, to be with the entire group in the presentness. It was very, very powerful. And so that was something that taught me in a way to be in the present moment, me in the present moment, with the team, with the client, holding the whole thing, holding myself, is something I learned. Very beautiful, a very challenging process. I'm being very frank, because I learned that, since it's democratic, all our voices are important. What I share and, how I feel, how I think is very powerful in this 1 hour session, very unique. So the concept of equalizer was important. So I understood the power of collaboration, the relational, the reflexiveness of the whole open dialogue process. And something that, of course, we witnessed psychological continuity, a concept that we understood, that we were able to hold all ourselves together, and the sessions are in progress right now. It's continuing. And so therefore, there's a lot of transformation in myself. As a practitioner, I'm learning, and that's something that I wish to share. It's a constant learning about myself, about my client, about my team. It's a journey. In a way, it's also very bonding. That's something that I understand. So one thing that Pina and I think Rita shared a very beautiful paper, which said that one can, we can use an activity. So the three of us discussed about using art-based therapy, and I've done a training in arts-based therapy. And one of the modality is visual art and a small storytelling. So we made a little plan, and we tried it out in a few sessions, in a couple of sessions with the client, where the meeting has pictures, and all of us did the activity together. Again, very unique. It's not you, but it's us. And it was a very natural evolution. There was Kirtana, Varsha, myself. We got engaged. It was almost like something happened in the process, and the client. So that was very important for us, where to a beautiful paper, thank you for sharing, by Eva Gelsberg from Sweden. So that, helped us reflect the process, where, it was about the art, visual art by the client, by all of us, so the art becomes mine and yours. So you tell me about my art, and we're speaking around that, keeping in mind the, the principles of open dialogue, which remains intact. A new understanding emerged from the knowledge that we, came together. So we pooled our experiences. And I think the theme was self-care. How am I taking care of myself? What is there? So the metaphor was a tree, the trunks of the tree trunk, the branches, and the roots. So we all worked on it together. It was very beautiful, the interpretation of the story. We were able to comment. Our experience were very immediate. My unknown parts and my known parts was part of the dialogue that came in. There was a lot of silence. A good part of our session was spent in the activity. It was very beautiful. It was almost like a meditative open dialogue process. So there was a presentness, and from a sort of unlocking of certain difficulties or trauma which emerged through the visual art, is something that we learned. And importantly, being transparent, even if I don't share that verbally, I think the art was able to bring those elements out. And that is something I felt was, interconnected us together as a team, as an open dialogue team, with the client. So that's something that I think even Kirtana and Varsha, some new insights emerged about myself, about the client. So I would like to probably hand over the baton to, Varsha and Kirtana, to also bring in some, some of the challenges that came up, some difficulties that we faced. Anders, Pina, you want to ask something? Brenalini, you want to say something? Anybody?
Dr. Lakshmi, another observation was when all of us engaged in the activity, somehow the client also realized that all of us have issues. It's just not them with issues and concerns, right? So when we did the tree activity, or when we had our storytelling session, each one of us genuinely shared some of our concerns that we had, and that kind of helped the client to open up much more, and made her feel more comfortable, is something that we had observed. Yeah, talking about some of the challenges, I think, so this whole OD was a new process, right? So reflections among three of us, and then the clients hearing many perspectives of that. So, and the dialogue by itself involves a lot of uncertainty. You never know who's going to say what. So somehow you don't have control over what is really going on. To some extent you do, but it just comes, it's fluid, just happens naturally. So somewhere I personally found that to be a bit challenging. And number two, initially with one of my clients, they had struggle accepting the OD as a team. You know, the therapist we had, all three of us were therapists, so somehow the client and the support network were not comfortable with one or two of us. So then how do we resolve that? So that was also done as a reflective session. That was a session by itself. It came up naturally and we tried to, you know, resolve that. So it took us some time to settle as a team. So I think these were two major challenges which stood out for me.
Yeah, and for me personally, being non-directive was really very challenging for me initially, both from a therapist point of view and also from the client's point of view, because many times when they look out for solutions or when they immediately need some solution, and being non-directive was initially was very challenging because and it took some time for us to get attuned to this process. And for the client also, as she rightly pointed out, it was really a different experience for them, to come together, that feeling of togetherness, and discussing with them about certain issues. And every time the focus is on emotion and the stories, slowly we got the we got used to it. And initially we were also finding I was also finding it difficult when there were multiple voices, because there is a voice of a therapist, a co-therapist, the family members, and sometimes the client felt overwhelming hearing to so many voices. But slowly they got they understanding, and they started reflecting about the whole process, about the safe space, and how and what each one is experiencing. So for me personally, these two things was quite challenging initially, but then slowly no, we really understood the whole dynamics of our open dialogue rage and commit.
Thank you, Varsha. Thank you, Dr. Lakshmi. Thank you, Kirana. I also have a couple of questions and everything, but I think I would just like to tell the audience that we do have a question and answer session. But before that, I would just like request Dr. Seshadri to say a few words, because I know I had a couple of chats with him and he was so bowled over by open dialogue. I think he has a few things to say. So Dr. Seshadri, would you like to speak about your experience working with clients? Is he? I think maybe his connectivity is poor. So we can probably circle back to him whenever he comes on board. And Pina, if you had any comments on what Varsha and Kirana had to say. If not, we can sort of move into invite other people who have done the course to share their thoughts.
Just one, not comment, but just an idea that came in my mind, how moving in this field of the dialogical approach means also to work on yourself. And I appreciate very much what Kirana, Varsha, and Lakshmi said. I really appreciate how they focused on this transformation. Change means how they work on themselves. I think it's a very important point, this one.
Absolutely. We have a couple of our alumni from the first Open Dialogue batch on the group, and I think we also have questions from YouTube, and Dr. Lakshmi, you said that there were questions on the group. So shall we start the question and answer session? Yeah? Okay, fine. So, yeah, I'll just paste the questions here on the chat. But before that, we have Dr. Anbu, we have we have Archana, we have multiple people who've attended the course. So if you would like to start off with your experiences, and then we can move into the comments from YouTube. Dr. Anbu, are you there?
Yeah. Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, very
Hello?
much. Very
can
much.
you hear?
We can. We can.
So, yeah. So, Sia, everyone, especially Pina. So it's very nice to come back and again get reconnected to Open Dialogue. Last 1.5 years, I've not been doing much clinical work. But I want to connect because before that we were going very strong, as I always say, and I will say again, that Banyan in a very intuitive, organic way has a very open dialogic method always from the beginning because of various reasons, of practical circumstances, and also by intention and also unconsciously. So whichever way you look at it. But open dialogue, obviously it's a system, it's a whole methodology, it's a whole philosophical approach, and with a very strong clinical underpinning. So obviously it's also very scientifically studied, so that way it adds value, as in using this method itself as an approach. Whereas probably what we are using at the Banyan is more like a transdisciplinary approach, where yes, it's a very team-based work where there's a lot of space given for, it's not too hierarchical, all that sort of thing. But to go the whole hog, the dialogic way. So let me say, I have used the open dialogic method in two ways. One, in a non-clinical setting, quite a lot in the non-clinical setting, which in the last 1.5 years, also 1 year I've been using it. It was a slight, either my misunderstanding or my convenient focus on one thing, because the open dialogic system comes from the dialogic methodology, which I gather from Pina and also through our readings, all the articles, secular and all that. So we know that it started in Finland in more open civil society, right? In the corporation, in the schools, administration, and where of course hierarchy is very, very strong. Politics, education, politics is, hierarchy is part and parcel of the thing. So, but then we here at the Banyan, the chapter we took was open dialogue, which is more purely for clinical settings. especially mental health settings, that sort of thing. So because of my bias or my misreading, I did also use it a lot for the non-clinical setting. In fact, last year I've done a book reading group where the review itself had more like a open dialogic system, so which became a very it just became very, very successful as an approach rather than a usual the presenter reviews and then there are a few select questions and that's it. This became so it became modeled on the dialogic system. So what I'm very so as I said, at the Banyan we use a lot of these things inadvertently or intentionally, but this whole label, this whole this whole school of this kind of approach. So there I'm very clear they have the structure where how you sit there, how the seating is makes a lot of difference. Right now, the way we are here on the Zoom, our interactions and transactions get influenced by that. So likewise, when we sit, do we sit in a U shape? Do we sit in a circle? And do we sit in a concentric circle? Who sits when? All that makes a lot of difference. So in all the discussions, the structure itself brought out the possibilities of more listening and more opening of people, because you would either be sitting in the outer circle or you may be sitting in the inner circle as in a reflective mode or in a the fishbowl kind of thing. So I found that all the small voices, or more importantly the silent voices, inner voices could be heard, and you could hear your own voice also. A lot of time we speak so much and we we are trouble, a lot of time we are troubleshooting, we are solving, or we are unfortunately for us, a lot of times we are more directional and all that. Hopefully we are not dictatorial, but a lot of times we are this thing. So with all that, so this whole structure is so elegant. It's so simple, but it makes it all flow. So you could hear your own inner thoughts and you could reflect them, and you could hear the other people, the lesser voices, and the whole this whole thing of all for one and one for all sort of thing. Again, as others said, it's not the onus is on you, or so there's always this you can consciously, sometimes in a one-on-one setting, you can't say, hey, let me think a bit or give me a sec. Of course, we can do it with people we know, but a lot of times that doesn't happen, right? So you just keep moving, right? But here there's a structure to it, and there's a help from the other person. So you have to reflect, and the reflection itself is structured. So that's something very good. And yes, bringing in multiple stakeholders and on the same page. So that's very, very important. And then handling them. See, we can bring everybody in, but again, as Kirana was saying, sometimes it can be quite challenging, because then there becomes a like a school teacher would say, is this a fish market or what? So everybody is clamoring and all that. But again, here the way it is structured, the way it is set, the way the process flows, everybody is assured of their space and their importance, and everybody gets heard. And so I think it's a very holistic method. And I particularly see, even clinically, yes, quite a lot of when you have 2-3 subspecialties or even other specialists coming in, there can be quite a lot of can be quite a lot of difference of opinion, trying to, push your discipline or all that sort of thing. But this structure makes it very easy. But then I am of the opinion that the whole dialogic approach has to come, especially in India. Like, you have this Amartya Sen's book, Argumentative Indian. So we are very talkative and we are very argumentative. So this method is a very beautiful way in which, the dialogues are equalized, and the dialogues are much more reflective. There is as Lakshmi was saying, there's a lot of mindfulness element, almost like a zenness to it. So yeah, so if you allow me, I will keep talking. So immediately, this is what strikes me. I think let other people also share, and then maybe we can have more discussions around it.
Thank you, Dr. Anbu. Dr. Seshadri is back. I think he had a connectivity issue. So what you missed, Dr. Seshadri, we were just, Kirtana, Varsha and Dr. Lakshmi were going through their own sessions. And I know you have conducted a few sessions and observed them as well. So we just wanted to know if you can share your thoughts before. There are a couple of questions coming in, but if you can share your thoughts before that. As a psychiatrist, Dr. Anbu also shared, but if you can also share, I think it would be very useful. You need to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Mrinalini. Regarding having some sessions, I think, I need to correct you there. I haven't really had the opportunity of conducting sessions per se, partly because we underwent our course itself during the pandemic. And so I haven't really had an opportunity to try and use that in my practice, so to speak. But yes, I have been involved in I had the good fortune of being involved in one session, more in the form of an observer, if you like, where Vandana and Dr. Kishore were also there. And we actually went to meet a client at his home. Now, this is quite different to what we would do. You see, let me just tell you a little bit about my background. You see, as I said earlier, I've been working in hardcore clinical psychiatry using the medical model. And I had the luxury of working in a corporate setup where we had clinical psychologists, 3 of them. And so I used to confine myself mainly to treating patients using medicines. And my work began there and ended there. Anyone who needed therapy and stuff like that, I used to refer them on to the psychologists. So that's my background, okay? And now, ever since I've joined the Banyan full-time, like for the past 2 years or so, and exposure to the open dialogue approach, I have been bringing about little changes. I've got a long way to go, but little changes. I think the Banyan's setup facilitates this so-called multidisciplinary approach, where more people are involved, and so it is possible to get the inputs from others as well. I haven't had formal, OD sessions as such with a co-therapist, but even in day-to-day activity, looking after the Banyan clients, I found that it is. I have made a shift in the sense. From being a one-on-one kind of a psychiatrist, where there was a patient who came to me, expected a solution, and I provided them with one, mainly in the form of medication. From there, I've moved on, and now I am part of this multidisciplinary team where we have psychologists, we have social workers, we got the nurses, and so I take the inputs of all of them before we make little decisions. In fact, even whether we need to increase the medication of a patient or no, I usually seek the inputs of the others, and so it's kind of more consensus rather than just me deciding everything. And in a way, it is what shall I say, a relief. In the conventional approach, it begins with me and ends with me. The buck stops with me, as it were. So there's a lot of stress to be able to find the solution. And and there's nobody to share it with. Whereas here in this kind of an approach where you have others involved, so it is not that you're taking a decision and held entirely responsible, it's a collective decision, and so collective responsibility. So I like that part of it. And coming back to this particular case where I was involved, so initially though we say that, we try to have as far as possible all the meetings, even in the first meeting involving the client and his family and the network that is associated with, but sometimes it may not be possible. Like in this particular case, it was the parents who were, at the end of their wits, not knowing how to manage their son. And so they happened to come over and they shared their story at great length. And then we had planned that the next session with the son would come to the hospital and we'd have the second session there. But as expected, he refused to come. And so unlike in the conventional setup where if the patient didn't come, that was it. So here we actually, from 3 different corners of Chennai, we met up at the client's residence. And I think we had quite a fruitful session. And as I said, I was mainly in the form of an observer. Okay, and so we took everybody's viewpoints into consideration. We gave the client, just like we had given the parents a one-on-one session, we gave the son also a one-on-one session. And subsequently, we brought the parents along. And, we were able to discuss. I think that is quite a shift from what we would do in the conventional setup. So as I said, I still haven't had an opportunity, but yes, there are a lot of things from the open dialogue approach which we can introduce into even our regular day-to-day practice, being a little more, what shall I say, less didactic, listening more, giving everyone a chance to speak, and trying not to do things behind their backs, all discussions to be taken in the presence of the client and his family, no discussions to be taken outside of that. Yes, it is quite a shift from the other approach, but I think in certain settings, especially like organizations like the Banyan, where we may have the luxury of having more than one therapist, okay, because I'm sure the big question is going to be, do we have the luxury of having 2 or more therapists for open dialogue sessions in our country? The answer is certainly a big no. But in certain setups, certainly we can have this kind of a thing. And, I look forward to learning more about it and to trying to implement this in the Banyan setup, as well as while Kirtana was talking. In fact, I identified one client with whom we are having some issues at the moment. And I think I'm going to rope in Kirtana for us to do a kind of an OD approach with her, using Kirtana as the co-therapist. That's all I have to say at this point in time. And I, hand it back to you, Mrinalini. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Seshadri. Actually, we have a couple of questions, and I wanted to go in a particular order. But since we ended Dr. Seshadri's session with the feasibility of doing open dialogue in an under-resourced context, so I would request Pina, Noble, and Rita to come in here, because we, as you know, are an extremely under-resourced mental health setting, and we don't even have sometimes a place for one therapist for get 2. So, but the principles of open dialogue and the way and the modalities are way too important in our setting to not do it. So, how would you say we can navigate, conducting, implementing, and sort of expanding the reach of open dialogue in keeping with the restrictions, the resource restrictions that we have? And I know we raised this in class as well, but since a larger audience is listening, if we can talk about it.
Maybe I can start and then Rita and Noble can follow. I think this is a relevant issue, not only in India, in many other countries. there is these problems that because the idea is to have such a long treatment meeting, we said 1.5 hours, even 2 hours sometimes, with more than one therapist, could seem really difficult to achieve this possibility. And in reality is sometimes, I refer to my experience in Italy, in Trieste, sometimes is quite difficult to do in this way. But first, as we said, and as also Kirana and Varsha said, if you change slowly the context, then you gain time in another position, not spending longer time in years with the same group of same network and family, but maybe you reduce in long time and gain time from the present session. And also, I think another consideration is about the attitude. As we said, to work in open dialogue means also to change radically your attitude, that slowly activate, changing attitude, activate the resources of the network. The network, as I know in India and many other places, is sometimes a bit passive in terms waiting for the resolution from the technician, from the services. And this idea to activate the community, to activate the network, the family, to find a kind of more collective, a common solution, maybe could be another way to changing attitude to change then the process and the answer.
Okay. Yeah. So I think talking more about the attitude and bringing in the principles as part of our regular sessions itself, and taking on the philosophy of open dialogue and looking at it on a case-to-case basis is, I think, what we are looking at as a way to temporarily solve the problem, while we continue to be constrained by the kind of resources that we have. Is that right?
Yeah, I wonder, Rita and Nobel, what they think about this point.
I think that this question of resources is very important, but also it's difficult to start, but maybe when you have this, it's important to have education and starting to think on a different way, or having different options, different perspective. As now we heard these experiences tell about that change, and I think if there were more people who are who get to know this open dialogue approach, so they could find the way to go forward, and how to use these principles, or they are not rigorous, but they may change. You may change. You have to take you have to do what you can do in that context where you are doing your work.
Got it. Got it. So you more, get it into the education system and make more people aware of open dialogue. So, as a result of which you increase the number of resources that are available to do this. And also now the treatment modalities, everything is also moved online. So it is something that we can even consider doing online and remotely, and sort of take on cases across multiple contexts, and then try to solve them. And through by solving or in spurring this discussion with on a case to case basis, we can bring in more people who see the benefit of open dialogue and then get into the education. So I think there are both ways to also look at it.
Yes.
Noble, would you like to say something?
Yeah, thank you so much. Your question. At first, I wanna recommend you to think about what is essence and principle of open dialogue. I mean, just keep the principle of open dialogue idea is not enough, but we should think why the 7 principle of open dialogue is needed. Open dialogue is a very humanistic approach and a very natural approach, I think. I mean, for human beings, we need safety and feeling safe in the relationship, human relationship. So to have a safe relationship, we need some people. I mean, the one-on-one meeting is not so natural because we are the people, and so many people getting together. In the situation, one-on-one meeting is very unnatural, right? Like that, we need to think what is essential thing in a 7 principle of open dialogue. And we can have some options, I guess. For example, we can utilize some resources, not only therapists, doctor or psychotherapists, but also, I mean, social workers or their family or their relatives as well. I mean, when I'm having an open dialogue session in my office, in my case, in one case, the relative of a client were coming to the session, and they could have a dialogue with each other. So I mean, not only the therapist, there are the client and the client's son, daughter, and their relative in the session. And we could have a dialogue so much. And then the symptom and feature of a client is becoming changing so much. And so we are very easy to stick to the things like a solution or a concrete thing. How can I do for that? This kind of idea is very easy to be coming up our minds, but that is not so important. But the important thing is just like having a dialogue, and to have a dialogue, we can gather the people in the session if the client can feel safe. I mean, the not safe, dangerous person is not welcoming for the client, of course. So we need to ask the client who is a safe person for him or her. But if the person is safe, it would be the one member of a dialogue. And as another option, multiple voices doesn't mean only like many people, but including our multiple voices in a dialogue in our brain.
Yes.
So each therapist have so many voices in our mind. So we don't stick to one idea and one perspective. We can have so many perspectives, and we can put it out, put so many ideas out, and be tolerant of uncertainty. So I mean, we don't need to decide which is correct and which is right one. So we can provide so many ideas, and we can have a dialogue together. So this is my idea.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I mean, I just, we were all thinking this because we are different people at different times, right? So we don't have to, the tolerance of uncertainty, most importantly in our own heads, when we say that I felt differently yesterday and I feel differently today, and it's fine. And I don't need to be apologetic about that, is something that open dialogue gives the space for, which all of us absolutely love, and it doesn't bracket all of us into different stereotypes. We are different people at different times. And another thing, like you said, Noble, it's very humanistic, it's very natural in its approach, very deontological also, in that sense, where the means justify the ends. You take them through the whole process, and when we look at things like procedural justice, and when we Pina knows, and many of you know about our work, where we work predominantly with homeless people with mental health issues. So when we go for a quote unquote rescue, we call it critical time intervention now. So when we go for a rescue, the client is obviously in a very, very agitated state, and they feel very exposed. They feel, that people are watching them. You feel almost naked at a point. So at that point, they are at their most vulnerable. So how would you use a dialogical approach, or rather, you must use a dialogical approach, not just with words, but with your body language, which we also learned a lot in class. The way, you sit, the way you express yourself, your nonverbal communication, how closed you are to the person. All these things really, really matter in terms of building long-term trust. So and we discussed this multiple times in class, but I would also just like to request all three of you again and others to come in and talk about, in the context of rescue, or in the context of admission, when we are on the streets, how does one take on a dialogic approach when the client is so vulnerable, or the individual is so vulnerable? Because I know that hospital admissions were also reduced by 90% at one point, based on both what Rita has said and what we have learned in class. And the whole process started with immediate responses, and using support networks. So we do a combination of the two. There are support networks, but very often while working with homeless people, most of the support networks are also strangers. Right. So using with homeless people and with strangers as your support network, how do the three of you think? It's just a very theoretical question, but it did come up because it did come up. So what do the three of you think it's about this very, very unique activity, or with a very unique population that we work with? How do we work around the whole rescue process using a dialogic approach?
A difficult question.
It's a difficult question.
But I guess the safety issue is important in those situations.
Yeah.
And also the professionals or workers, they need to feel a kind of some safety, feel themselves safety, as being safe. I don't know.
Something going on.
Something. I don't know who's speaking, but.
Well, maybe in the meantime, I can just add to
sure.
the words of Rita, just a few words about safety and respect. I mean, of course, the situation that you mentioned, Nalini, is very extreme. And we know that in mental health and in psychiatric intervention, sometimes there are this kind of extreme situation. Open dialogue is absolutely perfect for the acute intervention. But what you mentioned was really a very, very extreme situation. Homeless people agitated in the middle of the street. I think to keep the safety of the person and of the professional, as Rita mentioned, and the respect of the person are the main requirement. Because unfortunately, many times in the emergency of the situation, when the situation became very, very urgent and extreme, there is the risk to become too much invasive, to become invasive. And so put attention and try to keep safety and respect of the person as human being, I think is the main point. And then you can do the best that you can do. You cannot, for sure, just sit in and try to have a dialogue when there are no conditions, but you can express clearly what we are going to do, to explain to the person. Sometimes we think some people cannot understand in the special moment, but to say and to share what we are going to do in any moment could be useful to maintain this attitude of respect of the other one. And yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. So in this, I would also then move into the next question that was asked is, where else can open dialogue be used? Because I asked very specifically about homeless people, and I know that we also work with schools in Finland using open dialogue. So if the three of you can again come in on where else it's being used, and then I will get into a very specific case question that one of the participants have asked. Any of you can talk about
it. I didn't quite get the question.
So Rita, the question that was asked is, apart from people with mental illness and in a therapeutic setting, where else can the open dialogue practice be used?
Where else then in mental
like in schools
health settings?
Yeah.
I don't know about the open dialogue approach is a quite special way to work in mental health settings, but many principles and the idea of dialogue, as Nobel told us, it might be very central and important, useful idea in many settings, as in schools with children.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to say about this.
Sure, sure. Pina, Nobel, would you like to?
Maybe we can talk also not only about open dialogue, but became more simple talking about dialogical approach. And this attitude of the dialogical approach can be really used in many fields. And as you said, in the school, or for example, I'm using it a lot in the university teaching. It could be very useful to introduce this possibility of interaction, of creating some reflecting conversation, and on or in the meetings, some meetings, in all the situation of integration between different kind of services. And there are some examples of using the dialogical approach in, for example, in the border between, in the meeting between administrator, politician, and operator of health services or social services, because some borders sometimes are very difficult to manage. And using a dialogical approach, there are also other dialogical approach, not only open dialogue, that could be really very, very useful in managing this kind of context.
Yeah, thank you, Pina. It's yes, the open dialogue is just like the approach named in the mental health section, but we can have so many kind of dialogical approaches. I mean, dialogue. What is dialogue? This is important. How can we have a dialogue, and how can continue dialogue? So this is so ambiguous, and as I mentioned before, we need to divide into speaking and listening time. This kind of a manner would be very useful and very important for us to think about a dialogue. But anyway, anywhere we can use a dialogical approach, and the dialogical approach is not a skill, not a thing, just like the relationship, type of relationship between human being. I mean, the God or Buddha, or I don't know, anything, something great, give us the great opportunity to have a dialogue, because only a human being have words, and we can communicate with words and this kind of non-verbal communication. So this kind of a communication is used only by a human being, and not only verbal communication. We can have this kind of communication with our hands or body or something like that. And if even if we don't have the words, literary words, we can have a dialogue with non-verbal senses. So this kind of communication would be a very, very, very important for each situation. So this is my answer. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I remember another discussion that we had, that words sometimes become such a inhibitor to communicating. So what you want to say and what you say is really restricted by words, and they become such a nuisance at some point. So the language of equality and the language of justice, I think, is what open dialogue sort of embraces, which brings me to the next two questions, because what one of our participants and a very, very close colleague of the Banyan, Dr. Indu Prakash Singh, has talked about an experience with the rescue. where the client completely refused to talk to the doctors in the hospital, but the team that works with her, the homeless people that live with her, and the friends that she had were able to elicit way more from her, because there was equality, there was a sense of respect, like Pina talked about. There is a sense of a genuinely wanting to understand rather than control, and rather than wanting to quickly solve, and feeling that sense of power that, okay, I've resolved an issue. If people pick up on that, everybody picks up on that, humans, animals, everybody picks up on the sense of what is your intent. And I think conveying your intent through dialogue is what I think all of us are trying to come together to do, because and this again goes into the next part of the conversation, where that's why we asked you, where else can it be used? Because again, Induji and a couple of others, we work with extremely vulnerable populations beyond the homeless. We are now starting our work with sanitary workers who really have gone through one of the most unimaginable human rights violations over the past 2000 years, not even now. And there has never been an attempt to talk. There's been an attempt to solve. There has been an attempt to control. There has been an attempt to, get rich over. So some of these populations, all the principles that the three of you mentioned, it will be extremely vital, and they are extremely crucial to adopt these methods in working with vulnerable populations. I don't know if I've answered everybody's questions through this. If there's anything else you can ask, but so this was predominantly what people wanted to know. So how is it, can it be used in other populations? And the answer is yes. You're using it in universities, you're using it in schools. We want to use it with the next group of cohorts that we work with, and really vulnerable populations, people who've experienced trauma. Now the question is going to be how is it going to be used, and how do we get trained? So some practical questions have come up. So I would urge the three of you to again talk about the approach of teaching open dialogue. What will a course cover? What can a lay person take from this, and how do we move forward?
Well, I can share my experience about learning open dialogue approach in Finland and before in Italy. Something that I really liked and changed my view about the idea of learning, and so consequently the idea of teaching, is that a normal idea is that competition and stress is part of the teaching and the learning. But in this field, the idea is that feeling safe and relaxed and trustful is the best way to put yourself in a condition of learning. Because it's exactly what happened also in a therapeutic session. When you create, as therapists, a safe space where people can feel relaxed and safe to share and express, is much, much better for the dialogue. And it's exactly what happened in the learning and teaching process. So when we learn, we can say we are in the same position of a client. And so if we feel safe and relaxed, we can absolutely learn much more. So the goal of the teacher is to take care, to be a facilitator, even there as a teacher, and to take care of in creating a safe, trustful space where it's possible to share each one experience, and it's possible to listen each one of the people that are present. I think it's a specular process.
So what we are trying to do through open dialogue is to also structure how we listen, structure how we communicate, right? So as therapists or as teachers or as government officials, whatever it is that we are, basically what the course attempts to do is to help us structure how we speak, how we listen, how we communicate, and how we convey, essentially. So to this end, can the three of you just speak about, the course, and what exactly are the elements of the course, what is required from the teacher, and what is required from the students, and what do they gain at the end of it, and how are we, we'll get to the last part because we have 15 minutes to go. So this is a question that's been repeated. Where do I enroll? What's going to happen? If any of you would like to start.
Maybe Kirana, you can just share your opinion. You did the course and you are into the organization of this next bunch. So maybe coming from you, you can even share your idea about this if you like, and we can implement.
I will do that. Pina, what I was trying to ask is just to, sort of talk about what are the key elements that will be taught by you all, and then I will then go through the blocks and what is largely covered, just the sort of overall structure of the course.
Yeah, maybe we can be very, very easy and generic, and then will be, I think the foundation course means to share the basic elements to put the people in the condition to use it, to start to have an introduction to the topic, and then to start to experiment clinically in a clinical field of where they like to experiment this approach and to have some feedback, supervision, these kind of things to feel safe to start to experiment.
And we also go through elements of psychotherapy in this course, and we have sessions. We have a lot of group sessions where we each person gets to play the role of a client, a role of a co-therapist, a role of a therapist, and just the role of an observer, right? So that's another thing that we do through the course in terms of theory and practice. It's a combination of both, and we have about 100 hours of the course that we need to go through, and we need to go back and meet our clients, and come back with feedback at the next session. So just to give the listeners a overview, we have 5 blocks, 4 days each, 1 month apart, and these classes are about 5 to 6 hours with breaks, and you need to go through all 5 blocks to complete the course, and you will be certified as an open dialogue practitioner. And to become a trainer is another 2 years, but we will get to that later. So we would like to roll out the 3rd batch soon, and we will be sharing more information. But just to give the listeners an overall perspective, it is we need to go through this for a period of 6 months with the blocks that I mentioned. Have I covered, or is there anything else that I'm missing? Yeah? Okay. So we will be sharing another ad on social media and in our newsletters. Whoever would like to enroll, please let us know. And based on, what are the preferred dates of the trainers, because we have 3 trainers now. And based on that, we will be deciding on dates and coming back. So those are more practicalities that I will, Marius and others at BAM will be sharing with you. But we just wanted to give you an overview as to what the whole course entails and what is the responsibility that is expected from the students' end. If there is no other question, we can perhaps just sort of wrap up with last thoughts that anybody has.
I have a sort of a half thought, half doubt, which I would like Pina and the panel to, comment on. So I remember Dr. Seshadri saying it's like a multidisciplinary approach. And even I had mentioned the word transdisciplinary approach. yes, it's very much so. But I also feel, there's this particular saying in English. We say it takes a village to bring up a child. It takes a village. It's not just the father, mother, or even the grandparents or siblings. It's a whole village, including the headman and the, if you take your asterisks or something, vital statistics and unhygienics and the whole, everybody, the last man, they teach you some game or they do some, everybody has a role to play in the village, in your upbringing, in your growth. So like that, I think open dialogue is like that. It's a whole village approach, the whole ecology. It's not just the specialists who come in or the persons who are directly involved with the care, but also, we look at the whole network. It's a very enriched kind of a system where everything comes in, and the only magic here is how do you make it all run smoothly with such a heterogeneous kind of a team of varying kind of abilities, including people who are not at all professionally trained, and to boot, they are also subjectively involved as the client or the caregivers with their in dynamics and all that. So I think it's a whole village approach, I feel. So yeah, so I don't know. I just
also said, Dr. Anbu, that basically he said that it's not one person, it's not two people. We are not used to being alone. We are not an island. It takes so many people, so many pieces to put one human being together. So why is it that in therapy alone it needs to be different? Right. So I think that's where this whole approach is coming from. And that's why it works so well for a context like ours. So if there are no other thoughts, I will just request the three trainers, Rita, Noble, and Pina, if you have any thing to say, or we can, after you do, we will wrap up and, move on to the next session. Move on to the next steps with regard to getting our third course going. Any thoughts? Rita, you need to unmute yourself.
I think still I was surprised what Nobel told us about this, what is important here, and this about this dialogue, and I think that was very important idea, and I really hope that many people come having education, and that will give them an insight and courage, more courage to do what is possible to do, and the network, these connections with the patient and the family members and the network will give some kind of forward going possibilities, will open like that. But thank you. This was very interesting meeting.
Thank you so much, and we'll keep doing this in smaller groups as well. Noble, do you have any thoughts?
Okay, thank you, Rita. I think also it's like dialogue is very simple, just like a conversation, but the simple is difficult. Very simple. So we have to think about that again and again. This is dialogue or not? Is this monologue or something like that? And I think this is important to believe in self-healing power in a human being. each human being have this kind of a self-healing power to have a self-cure. So to have a self-healing power, we need to have a safe place, safe relationship. To construct to a safe place or safe relationship, we need dialogue. So let's continue dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you. Pina, the pièce de résistance.
Yes, thank you. The thoughts that are going in my mind is how the dialogical approach could be challenging. Could be challenging for ideas like the hierarchy and the topic of the power in terms of rules. So having, because it's a humanistic approach, having a proper confident dialogue means to give up to some power in terms of rules and hierarchy. And as I said before, on the other side, for the same reason, open dialogue is a psychotherapeutic approach that empower people, all the people that are present. But if for the one that has much more power, like the psychiatrist, psychologists, and so on and on in the hierarchy of the health system, they are able to give up a bit on their own professional rule powers and just stay with your own personal power as all the other people that are there present. So I think this is a very big challenge, but a very interesting challenge. Thank you to you all. It was really interesting meeting for all of us, I hope.
Thank you so much. And we didn't discuss power, but I think it requires a whole different webinar, which I think I'm going to grab onto and maybe host next time. So thank you all so much. We've had a great turnout, and I know there's been power cuts across Chennai, but we've had a great turnout. And thank you for Pina, thank you Noble, thank you Rita, Dr. Lakshmi, Dr. Seshadri, everybody for coming on board and talking about your experiences. Like we said, this is a stepping stone to the third course and the school that we are going to set up. They have somehow managed to do these classes online, which is just unbelievable, because we saw the benefit of doing it in person, but when we chatted with the rest of our cohorts, they were just as comfortable doing it online. And I know how difficult it was, for Pina and everybody to plan. So the third course will also, I think, will be online, and we will be sharing our details very soon, and we will be advertising. But before that, maybe another session like this, or during, we'll discuss internally and come back. Thank you so very much, and we look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. Thank you, and good night. Thank you.